Well, this is a typical street anywhere in the country. Pull up next to the curb and you're putting money in the meter. Well, I found a loophole that you are tax exempt from putting money into a meter. This option didn't come about until 1969, but no one picked up on it until now. Here's a handicap placard. In order to be protected, you have to invoke it. You have to display it to seek your protection. That's important to know. Because what we were told is a title, it's more than a title. Before 1919, that's all it was. It was a certificate of title. But after 1919, when the federal government got involved, that became your tax certificate. Proof that your taxes were paid. See, after 1919, two requirements had to be met. You had to surrender the certificate of origin, so in that respect your title was your confiscation receipt, proof that the certificate of origin was confiscated. Then you had to pay tax on the vehicle itself. Well, and that way the title was your tax receipt, proof that taxes were paid. There's a tax stamp, a special tax stamp from 1874. Here's one 1882. Now, we're told that that's a VIN plate. It became public access in 1969. Well, 8 of those digits are the vehicle's tax identification number. It was put on the vehicle at the factory because in 1919, same year that the Prohibition came about, the automakers were taken over the same as the distilleries. After 1919, the car makers were making contraband, and that was its tax stamp number. This is the beginning of the VIN plate. Prior to 1919, the VIN plate or tax stamp was only relevant to the use of the vehicle. That is that metal plate that's riveted to the license plate as its own number. Here's one from Pennsylvania, 1915. There again is the VIN plate or the tax stamp plate. Back then, your registration card, which was actually a registration certificate, that was displayed on the back window of the vehicle, and that was not signed by you, but was signed by the tax officer. So if you parked your car on the street, a police officer could check the information on the certificate on the back window and check it with the information on the plate. See, all that between the plate and that registration certificate that was displayed, that created an estoppel because you prepaid your taxes. Your vehicle became licensed contraband, now allowed to legally trespass on the roads from curb to curb. Had authority for the full width of the road. Here's one for elevator certificate. Those are little tax stamps, one for every year. Now, here's a pack of cigarettes. Here is the pack of cigarettes VIN plate or tax stamp. They didn't put little pieces of metal plate, but that's the same purpose. Here's one from 1918. This is for a retail dealer in oleomargarine. Now here's the title from Pennsylvania. Prior to 1970, titles were issued by the Department of Revenue, and then afterwards they were issued by the Department of Transportation. The reason why that's a separate, I could talk about that on a different posting. Now here was Pennsylvania license plate, but this Keystone logo in the middle is there for a reason, because that is the official tax stamp insignia for Pennsylvania. The plate itself is a tax stamp. So that number doesn't identify the vehicle. Like I said, at one time that Keystone logo had its own separate number. After 1919, that number was taken off the plate and put on the vehicle. I threw this one in. Everyone's familiar with putting that adhesive sticker on the license plate every year. But during the war, when there was a metal shortage, you were allowed to reuse an expired plate, and then you got this little tag that you put on your plate with its own expiration date, and if you can't see, but it also had its own separate number right here. It was stamped in. So they said at one time the plates had their own expiration date stamped right on. You got a new set of plates every year. So this is how it works. This is only a sample sign. I might change the wording a little bit, but I'm gonna get the sign made up, laminated, and that'll be hung from the rearview mirror. And then you can go and take your title and display that on the dash, because that title, like it says, at one time the title was in the form of a sticker that went on your back window, because now you could invoke your property rights as a tenant. You need inspection sticker, registration, insurance. You have to spend all this money to get the vehicle on the road. But then they're saying, but once you pull up to a parking meter, that doesn't count. That you still have to pay a municipal tax to the city or township or whatever it might be. Well, the legal profession likes to split hairs down to the subatomic level. Well, once your vehicle is parked, it's not moving anymore. It's a static object. Well, if your license plate doesn't provide any protection, this is when your title can. Because you don't own the vehicle. That's the illusion. You're just a tenant. So this is where you can display your title and invoke your property rights as a tenant, because that title created an easement. Because your vehicle was contraband, not allowed on the roads until it was registered and licensed. In fact, in 1919, the federal government pre-adjudicated all vehicles as stolen by default, as such contraband subject to immediate confiscation until registered. Here's another Internal Revenue tax certificate. This is another one for a plate for Pennsylvania. But interesting, here's one, 1946, for a producer of marijuana. And this number here, this red number in the corner, titles have that number. It's in the margins. On titles in Pennsylvania, it's an 8-digit number. It's right in the margins. That's like a QSIP number. It becomes a negotiable instrument. Here's your license plate or tax stamp on a bottle of whiskey. Well, everybody's familiar with the Fifth Amendment. It lays dormant until you invoke it, and then the police officer is not allowed to interrogate you anymore. Well, you look at your title as though it was a handicap placard, that you were issued one, but no one ever told you of its power. So you display it on the dash along with a sign that says you're claiming that this is federal property and it's licensed contraband. And now you were granted an easement where this vehicle can now legally trespass upon the roads. That's the key word, legally trespass. That same goes too with a toll booth. You see, before, I can even go into with the Pennsylvania's inspection stickers. At one time, they had a fastenable a signature of the Secretary of Revenue, but they were sneaky and they hid the number on the back side where you couldn't see it. They were, if you check with the IRS, there are certain qualifications to have a legal receipt for a tax claim. But to me is that from doing a timeline chart, they were tampering with these documents, these stickers and paperwork, shortly before the advent of parking meters and toll booths. Because, well, you heard of double dipping. Well, this was like triple dipping. It's like you were made to pay tax, and they were depriving you of a receipt proving you paid your tax, so now they can tax you some more. I want to do a better documentary, but this is just a starting point. We'll see what happens from here.